We have already talked about the chances of Spider-Man No Way Home making 1 billion, and well, let's talk about 2 billion now. Is it possible? This is where I'm going to come in and say, no, it's not possible. Unless they can somehow secure a huge China release date, this thing will not see 2 billion. So this is literally not a hit piece or a hate video for Spider-Man No Way Home, as some people accuse me of if I point out the most obvious things, such as I don't think it can make over $2 billion or even 2 billion. It's just the logic of the entire thing. For example, the biggest film of all time is Avatar, followed by Avengers Endgame. Avatar only took it because it was re-released. Again, we go all the way down to the 5th film on the charts to be over 2 billion, and that's Avengers Infinity War, and that sits 48 million above the 2 billion mark. Now below that you have Jurassic World at 1.6 million. So here's the thing. The films that are in that camp, that are having those big numbers there, that are in the $2 billion club, let's call it that, there's something about these films that has, the obvious behind it. Besides Star Wars, it has China. And China was huge for Avengers Endgame, for Infinity War, and if you look back at some of the other biggest films, in the top 50 charts, for example, which includes Spider-Man Far From Home, you are going to see that the film had a rollout that was, very interesting, let's put it that way, where it was a small staggered release where they could then kick up the marketing in certain areas and push the film forward even more without much stiff competition. And of course, it was the fallout of Endgame and everything, so it helped Sony cross their first ever $1 billion. And if you just take a basic look at the current box office and how the drop-offs are going and what's happening, and you compare it to something like, Avengers Infinity War, because that's really what you have to do, because that's what it would have to compare to be able to just fall in there into that $2 billion bracket, you realize that the film is already falling short of those. Now, there could be a couple things that go on that could maybe push it closer to that. Securing a late China release, a prolonged theatrical run. The demand from people seeing the film could be huge as well, but it's just not tracking on that level, and that's just kind of the reality of it. And again, I don't see why it has to make $2 billion to be seen as a success. I don't know where people are starting to spin that narrative out of. Spider-Man legitimately is one of the biggest films of all time. We're talking about a huge film. I don't see why suddenly we're in this sort of mindset where if it doesn't hit this specific number, if it doesn't land in the top 5 or whatever, it's a failure. It's how did we get here? How did we get from the film will be a success at 100 million opening weekend to, only 260? Really? You couldn't even top Avengers Endgame with 350? Can't hit 2 billion, what a failure. Just so we're clear, this film literally has made back all its money. Advertising and everything. It's literally pure profit.